Hey, welcome back to the second streamcast of AP Psych. Hope you enjoyed the first one. I know it was a little long. I try to keep them like 7 or 8 minutes. That one was 13. So sorry about that. There's a lot of content about experiments. Today we're going to do part two, though, other types of research. So psychologists learn a lot from experiments, but there are other things they can do to learn about people as well. The three we're going to learn about today are case studies, naturalistic observation, and surveys. And this shows you what the other screencasts are for Unit 1. Okay, let's pull this up. Okay, so that shows you a little bit bigger. All right, so psychologists can do something called a case study, which is a technique when one person, animal, or a small group is studied in depth. So you're not getting 100 people or 1,000 people and giving them surveys or doing control group and experimental group. You're just getting a person or a small group of people, studying them in depth, having interviews with them over and over again, watching them in their natural settings, in their homes or in schools, playing with them, all kinds of things over and over again, maybe doing therapy with them. So in this picture, you can see the psychologist is working with a chimpanzee. The question he's studying is language uniquely human. So he's going to work with this chimpanzee for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and try to teach this chimp language. And so that would be a case study, working with this chimp a lot for a year or 2 years or something like that. Strengths and weaknesses of a case study. Strengths, you can get a really full, complete picture of the topic you're studying. Weakness, it's just one person or a small group. Sorry, that's a typo. It should say the individual or small group. Might not be representative of all people. So you might teach this one chimp language. It might be a genius chimp. No other chimps can learn language. So that one chimp might not be representative of all chimpanzees. Another technique psychologists use is called naturalistic observation. This is when the psychologist doesn't know much about the topic at all and just wants to learn what's going on. So you would observe the person or the group of people or the animals in their natural setting without interfering them at all. For example, you could observe animals in the wild, or you could record the self-seating patterns in a multiracial school lunchroom. So like black people, white people, Native Americans, who do they sit with at lunch? You could just go and observe that without interfering with students. So a lot of times you might do naturalistic observation before you do an experiment. So naturalistic observation would give you a lot of information, and then you could design your experiment based on that information. Strengths and weaknesses. Strength, naturalistic observation allows the researcher to describe a phenomenon. You could go to the lunchroom, you could see, hey, Native Americans sit here, here, and here. White people sit here, here, and here. Weakness, it doesn't allow you to explain what is going on. So you wouldn't know why Native Americans are sitting where they are, Asian kids, black kids, Latinos. You would just know where they're sitting. You could describe it, but you could not explain why. Okay, finally, we're going to get to surveys. I think you know what a survey is. In psychological research, it's exactly what you think it is. It's questioning a representative, random sample of people to get their self-reported attitudes, opinions, or behaviors. So you could give someone a piece of paper, they fill out the questions, they do the survey. You could do it on your computer or iPad or your phone, but it's just a survey. So you guys take these surveys for the school. Every now and then, every few years, you take the behavioral survey that's about drinking alcohol and using drugs or risky behavior, sexual behavior. So that's a survey. That is a research method. With surveys, you have the general population, which is all the people. So if you wanted to survey Gallatin High School, it would be every student at Gallatin High School would be the population. But then from that population, you would take a random sample. You would randomly select 100 people to give the survey to. So it would be like 25 freshmen, 25 sophomores, 25 juniors, 25 seniors. Half of them are male, half of them are female. And you would randomly pick those people. And it would mirror the overall population. So, like in this image, this big jar is the population, and you take a random sample, which would be like the small jar. If the survey sample is not random, if it's biased, the results of the survey are no good. This happens like if you wanted to survey seniors at Gallatin High and you went to a National Honor Society meeting because you're in that club, and so you just had like 15 of those people take the survey. Well, that's not representative of the senior class. That's a certain type of student in the senior class, and there are lots of other types of students you would be leaving out. So that your data would be biased. With surveys, you also have something called a wording effect, which is kind of a problem in a survey. When you word a question a particular way, the results could be changed. So, for example, if you ask people, should cigarette ads, sorry, that's a typo there, should cigarette ads be allowed on television? People are like, oh, maybe not. Maybe it's bad for kids. If you ask them, should cigarette ads be banned from television? People are like, hey, we don't like banning stuff. We're Americans. We're all about freedom. So we're not going to ban things. Well, those two questions are actually the exact same thing, but the wording is different. So when you're doing a survey, you have to be very careful about your wording, that you're not leading people to answer one way or another. Strengths and weaknesses of a survey. Strengths, lots of data, quickly and cheap. You can just make the surveys. It's quick. It's easy for people to answer 10 questions or even 50 questions. Weakness, may be vulnerable to wording effects and the self-serving bias. The self-serving bias I didn't mention. When respondents to surveys rate themselves in a more positive way than they should. For example, they rate themselves as smarter, funnier, more athletic, more creative, etc. So that tends to happen when we answer surveys. We tend to rate ourselves a little bit higher than normal, so that's called the self-serving bias. Back to the strength of surveys, lots of data, quickly and cheap. When you do experiments, that takes a lot of time, and it usually costs money because a lot of times you're paying the subjects to do the research. So experiments take a lot of time and they're expensive. Okay, last thing here, descriptive methods. So the three types of studies we've described in this screencast, case studies, surveys, naturalistic observation, are called descriptive research methods because they allow the researcher to describe the behaviors. You can describe them, you cannot explain them, you cannot show a cause and effect relationship. This one thing causes this behavior. You can't do that with descriptive research. Only experiments can show you cause and effect. All right, if you have any questions, email me or see me in class.